Hi again. So one of the questions I received just recently as well is what might work lifestyle look like post quarantine era time frame to look at. And the person that wrote and asked this question holds down a variety of jobs, some of them seasonally and some of them in retail. And just wondering what things might look like. So it's never too soon to look at something, so we can look at some of the changes that are going to be taking place. So the rest of this year, the rest of 2020 will be that in between uncomfortable. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Can we go back to something that we used to have or do, or will it have to be entirely different? And we'll all be asking that to some degree. Next year in 2021, it will be different, but it will be that new different or new normal or whatever you would want to call it, or at least the beginnings of that as well. And also along with that question came others of what kind of fields of study or fields of work would be perhaps lucrative or steady to go into at this time. And that's not so hard to look at either. So we can say, for instance, that if people want to go to work immediately or right away, you've heard me use this phrase before in other videos, perhaps, a livable threat. So if you are someone who is more able or willing to be not in danger or not necessarily at hazard all the time, but a livable threat. A livable threat might be a doctor or a nurse. They're simply exposed to much more of life, especially now, than other people would be. People who are constantly must be in contact with the public or things that the public is in contact with. Mail delivery people, deliveries of any kind at this point, you could still call that a livable threat, at least for the time being, until the world shifts a little bit more and we don't mind considering this subject anymore until it moves into the background again a little bit. So what can we do with that? We can include it. We can include it in our understanding of what the world looks like right now, and that it will look like something else next year, next month, but this is what it looks like right now. And adjust ourselves, adapt to whatever has to be. Human beings are very adaptable creatures. That is one of the ways that we have survived on this planet as long as we have, and we will survive this and several other mishaps as well. So looking in terms of what we can see in the workspace as well is, yes, perhaps more people working from home as they have been as well. But there will be some shifts in that because not everybody is well adapted for working at home. We're working at home while there's children or other things going on. Not everyone is in a secure space, environment, connection, room that feels work enough. So there will be many more hubs, I'll call them that for now, that people can work from. And there's these spaces out there already. Many times people who have small businesses or independent contractors, they work out of certain hubs where they have their own space that they can rent. And so we will see more of that, more of these created as well. The difference being that they will have clean spaces as well, or ways in which these can be disinfected maybe more than your own home can. Or they will have transition environments and spaces where you move from an outer environment to an inner one that is, again, either cleaner or thought of that way. A lot of this has to do with how we perceive life, and that will be how we choose to manifest some of these things as well. One of the things that we may not like about this, out of the working from home, is that employers will want to monitor more closely what or how much work is being done from home. Compare that and see if it's working or if it's not working. So in some ways, there may be some privacy or some freedoms that are yielded for that, to truly monitor how much time is spent at work. And I don't know exactly how that will come about yet, but you can be sure that these monitoring devices that either attach to your phones or your computers or are somehow related to your team, your work team, it will be known and it will need to be gauged in that way. So that may be some more specific ways that, that life changes a little bit. Working from home or working from one of these small hubs as opposed to the main corporate or offices or wherever it is might take on a little bit different look and feel in that way. People that are working in the field may require certain digital permits. These are already in use in other countries. I have not seen very much of this in the US yet, but digital permits that tell you where you can go, how far you can go, into what environments you can go, and that track these things as well. So tracking devices associated to almost everything that we do is coming or is already here. If you're someone that sees that as an invasion of privacy, then whatever that kind of employment may be, may not be right, may not be suitable for you, and you may want to choose something else. So other ways of screening people as well, before and after employment. So health screenings that are consistent, let's say, once a month or every 14 days, we could be coming into a time where all kinds of health screenings, certainly like temperature or other devices, other ways. Some of them will be accurate, some of them won't be accurate at all, and we'll have to figure out our way through this. Again, this is something new. Screenings and checkpoints, we can imagine that they will be at larger places, malls where there are a lot of people, even large shopping areas, airports, terminals. We can expect screening points in several different ways. Some of it just sounds almost too odd to talk about. On the other hand, when we compare that to saying how long can we be home, home or isolated, the idea of screenings sounds not so bad. So we'll see how that goes as well. In terms of homes, as new homes are built, there may be anti-rooms or clean rooms or other names for spaces in which you remove some outer garments and have special clothing that you only wear at home. And in terms of that special clothing, we can see that as clothing designers and garments come forward as well, new lines of clothing to wear that are not specifically home wear and not specifically work wear, but something that is in between those as well. Something that you would wear that is for social engagement, that is both home, work, in between that. So not exactly what we would consider business casual or leisure wear, but something of its own, surely to be developed. And this would be out of fabrics as well that are new, fabrics that repel inconsistent energies, germs, whatever it can be. It's hard for me to describe this yet, and I don't have the names for it yet, but maybe as we go forward a little bit, I will. So in terms of clothing, and I'll speak about it a little bit more when we do another video about 5G, for instance, there is clothing that can render some things invisible. So there's clothing that can render 5G imaging, facial detection. It can make it inconsistent, it can make it inaccurate, and there are perhaps advantages and benefits to that depending on who you are. And there is the opposite as well. There are ones that you may agree to that have your unique signature to it. This is your clothing, this is absolutely always you. It has your signature on it, almost as if it was a key or a code. So the advantage to this is that it's definitely you, And for instance, some people might choose that as opposed to having a chip. Talk about that some more too. You don't have to, you might not want to, then again, you might. So this kind of clothing that I'm describing is a little bit of an option in that as well. So in terms of what other kinds of work-related knowledge we can share about that, in terms of jobs that may be available, career choices, anything that involves low to medium to higher risk. In fact, jobs may be labeled that way instead of inside or outside, or this much time in the field versus home. They may include a risk level to the job description as well. Obviously, riskier positions may have a higher salary range to that. I'm not sure about that. Any kind of research data that can be bought and sold, there's money to be made in that area, whether you're buying or selling. So as always, data that is for sale, specific knowledge that is for sale, will continue to be a really hot commodities. Anything that has to do with security, and in that way, I don't mean just like a security guard, I mean actual security and well-being of something, whether it is an entity or then again a person or a project. Safeguarding, I want to say, more than just security. Things to do with privacy, either the hacking of privacy, as we well know, or more than ever the protecting of privacy, the protecting of freedom and privacy specific to individuals will be worth it for some people, an additional cost, something to add on to something. Anything that has to do with sanitizing, whether it's products, again, fabrics, work, life, environments, products and facilities, anything to do with that, any kind of testing. Every kind of test is going to want to be known and seen. Do you want to test for temperature? Do you want to test for antibodies? Do you want to test for whatever it is, against the general flu? Almost anything we are going to want to know, and we are going to be willing to pay to be tested or to have other people tested. And it'll be a big deal in your insurance programs as well, how much of that testing is covered or asked for as well. So anything to do with products that have to do with disinfecting, keeping environments at a certain level. In that way, there will be newer clinics as opposed to hospitals and even doctors' offices, just really unique and very specific clinics. And I'll talk more about that probably in another video as well. We're going to be looking for alternatives. We don't like what has happened. We don't like how it's happened or how it's happened to us or for us. So anything or anyone that can now provide alternatives to us, we are now more interested than we were before. Now that we see that the systems that we've been working with really are not serving us, have not served us well, we're looking for alternatives. We're looking for things in the privacy sector or the private sector as opposed to government or public sector. And we are looking for things that will save us time, that will save us money, that will keep our children safe and educated and entertained. We're going to be looking for alternative ways of transportation, depending on what we have done, different ways of procuring credentials, or ways in which they are interpreted, of administering almost everything. So as you might imagine, anything to do with health, whether it's very specific or very general, nurses, nurse practitioners will be in high demand, short supply, high demand, anything to do with immunology, any other kind of human deficiencies that we can discover and somehow pay more attention to. And of course, this has to do with those who are able to do this. It won't be everyone. We were going to see more separation of those that can versus those that can't. Access. How do we buy or keep access to what we have? Specific professionals that are in any way willing to work within riskier environments, that will be a plus. The word private, anything, whether it's private insurance, private banking, private anything. And more than ever, then we are putting our faith in science, which means that we're taking our faith away from other places. Maybe we're taking our faith away from our own intuition, and that's a concern for me, because we have so much wisdom within us. We have certain knowledge of our own being, of our own body, but we are afraid of that now. In some ways, we feel like we may have been let down or misled in that way. So we may have lost a little bit of confidence in our own ability to know or to receive knowledge and wisdom. So again, we're going to be putting our attention on external sources, external people. So science, computers, apps, tests, knowledge, information. And so all of this that we surround ourselves with can become a little bit confusing and misleading as well. So in all this that I say, my hope and desire is that we always at some point bring it back here, bring it back into our own heart, into our own environment, and create for ourselves a system of trust, a system of knowing, people in our life who we trust to share with us, that we have sources of information that, again, we can benefit by, and that we take great care before giving any of that away. Before giving our power away of simply trusting our information, maybe having fewer sources, but ones that instill in us a little bit more confidence and the ability to seek knowledge more than information, wisdom to know how to act and to be more than knowledge which we store, and that we do all these things with compassion, that we think about ourselves, that we think about our neighbors and friends and family and others who may not have the benefit of the resources that we either instantly access or know that the entitlement that we may have had until now will bring it to us or can procure it. So to be looking at the future of some of these changes as well, with an eye toward global equality, if possible, equanimity, and the desire to be in accord with our world, with our environment, and with our resources. So, a lot said for a short video. I'll see you next time.